are you doing?
Fantastic.
Cool. It's good to see you.
Good to be seen, man. Good to be seen. It's funny. I've actually wanted to sit down and just talk about life with you
Yeah.
at some point anyway, right?
Yeah.
And you have a lot of cool, exciting things going on.
Yeah.
You got some big dreams and aspirations,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool. And so I just want to learn a little bit more about you, right? So tell me a little bit about your background. Where'd you come from?
Yeah. So I am currently 24 years old.
Nice.
I grew up on the west side of Indianapolis, went to private school all through high school, started going to college at the University of Evansville, which is,
I
down
didn't know
in...
that. Yeah. I went to USI.
Oh, did you?
Yep.
No way.
100 years ago. But yeah, I went to USI. It was great. Evansville was a lot of fun, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Listen, we could have been stuck in the middle of a cornfield in Indiana here. Like, you could have gone, no offense, but we could have gone to Indiana State.
True. Yeah.
Evansville was a nice little small town. There was some things to do. It had a decent little bar scene. Like, it was okay.
Yeah, it was fine for what it needed to be, right? But it never went above and beyond what it was, right? It is what it is, and it was fantastic at that.
For those 4 years,
right?
It was fine.
Yeah, but I only was there for about 5 months.
Okay.
So I went there as a direct entry physical therapy student.
Cool.
And there was a lot of life that happened in those 5 months, and I realized then for the first time that I don't really do well in the school system. And
you're speaking my language, buddy.
Yeah, man. And it was so frustrating because if I wasn't involved, or like when I wasn't doing types of, extracurriculars, when I wasn't in the a cappella group or playing, intramurals, which I was doing tons of intramurals. I was in the library, I was studying, and it almost became a running joke with my friends. Like, if there was a place to find me, it was in the library. Yeah.
That's
awesome. But it was so frustrating because I never did well on any of my exams. Wow. So all of the hard work that my friends were seeing as I was studying, and I was like, yeah, I know where all of this stuff is. I couldn't show that in my exams. So therefore, my whole GPA, my whole experience was just...
had kind of a black mark all over it because it wasn't... The work wasn't yielding the results you were...
Right.
Yeah.
And to keep my direct entry spot, I had to maintain I think 3.25 cumulative GPA and a 3.0 science GPA. At the end of the first semester, I had a cumulative 2.8 GPA.
Still solid in a lot of worlds.
Still solid, but not good enough, right?
Yeah.
And I put so much pressure on myself, and there's a lot that went into that.
You think you were too hard on yourself?
I think I was putting my identity in something that wasn't myself.
Right.
I have this amazing older sister that always knew what to do. She was one of the best people that I know to this day.
Nice.
And I mean, she was, the heart of Covenant. I went to Covenant Christian High School, and
right on.
And that award is given to one graduating senior that shows their credo, which is minds enlightened, hearts inflamed, lives transformed the most.
So that's an actual award that she took home, won, got recognized for. Yeah,
and...
pretty cool.
Absolutely. And she was also the head of student council, principal's list, A honor roll. She was, the shit.
That's a lot to follow, to try and live up to.
Yeah. And I always felt like I had to be her. And she went to the University of Evansville as a physical therapist.
Okay.
And was direct entry. And when I got the call saying that I was admitted and I got the role, right? Or the spot.
Yeah.
I was so thrilled. I was so excited, and I felt like I was. I think I thought that I proved to myself and to my family and to the world that I was smart like my sister.
Right.
Which shouldn't have ever been my
You
thought
need to be
process.
smart
right?
like Andrew.
Right. And I didn't realize that
Right.
when I was growing up. And then in one semester, man, I went from being semi-healthy to being incredibly unhealthy. Mentally, physically. I also have a few other, dietary restrictions that caused a lot of turmoil with either my friends or with planning, and trying to adjust to a new environment already is tough.
They just weren't okay with taking the time to eat, where you need to eat, how you need to eat, like just focusing on that sort of thing became tough to work it into the kind of social schedule.
Yeah, and I'm a pretty laid back guy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't like saying, no, this is what I need.
Right.
At least a lot back then. I'm better at standing up for myself now, but back then at least, I really struggled, and I said, I'll just bring my own thing if we're going out to eat, and I'll just tag along. And so that way I wouldn't miss out on the social event.
Right.
And they could eat where they wanted to. But there's this there's something incredibly communal about food and eating, right?
Right, of course.
That is so gorgeous. And when someone can't eat the same things that everyone else is eating, man, there's a natural block, even if a lot of people are immune to even noticing it.
100%. Yeah. Well, and you would, the folks that are really friends, really cool and down with you, hopefully they see that sort of thing and they mix in an Andrew friendly trip, meal, place, whatever it is. You got to learn a little bit about, I think about that a lot with my son Ryder. Ryder's got a peanut allergy, which, we've talked about a little bit in the past, and it's something even at 7, he's really cool with dealing with it. But I think about him in the future. He's got to be careful. Like if all of a sudden the whole crew wants to go to Five Guys, there's peanuts all over the place in that joint.
Yeah.
He just can't go.
Right.
But you think right now you think it's easy because he'll just work it out, but it's not easy.
No.
Because you can't always, and especially that one's it's not minor, but it's something that you can work around in most restaurants.
Yeah.
But stuff like what you're dealing with is not as easy to work around in most restaurants. So you gotta come across some friends that are open to the idea of making sure that you get a salad every now and again, and that that you're taken care of, and that just kind of goes back to the people you surround yourself with, I guess, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think I did have some great people around me, but I wasn't willing really to let them stand up for me.
Right. Yeah.
And because I never wanted to be a burden. I still don't.
Yeah.
And so saying, I actually need this, that's tough for me to say.
Mm-hmm.
So I would almost intentionally disassociate myself with my friends because it was easier to not go than to have that block.
Right.
Because I don't want to have the same conversations about why I can't eat the same things with them every single time, or if we're out with a different group of friends and feeling incredibly uncomfortable.
Right.
So it was really rough. And now, or so I decided that with everything else that I was struggling with, the mental frustrations, the physical ailments that I was going through, with the counsel of my sister and with the counsel of a lot of others, I made the decision to not go back to UE after that first semester. And after that, man, it started to get a lot better.
Awesome.
I was in a place that was a lot more accommodating, and certainly helped me see that my strengths aren't dependent on my father, my mother, my sister. Really, what it came down to as a Christian personally is who I am in God. And then, and as I grow closer to Him, then I become more and more myself, right?
For sure, yeah. And do you think? Sorry to interrupt. I mean,
yeah.
Part of it. Do you think you were trying really hard to blend in and be kind of what those folks were being, and not be a burden, and not be this? When I find that maybe just leaning into sometimes your weaknesses, sometimes just who you are as a person, being okay to talk about that kind of stuff more.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I one of the things that I've found really interesting, you know, as my journey in social media here recently, I'm learning a lot more about it, is like some of the folks that have some sort of a thing that they perceive as an issue, publicly talking about it, publicly getting it out there, making that a good part of who you are, almost releases you to be yourself.
1000%. Yeah. I was so ashamed
Crazy
of my own depression as I was starting to figure it out. And, you know, as a Christian dude, like, there's so much pressure on knowing that God is in control. And in the Bible, it says, do not be anxious 365 times.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And which,
interesting number too, right? With the number of days in the year, don't be
Right.
anxious every single day of the year.
right.
It's a weird, you know.
Yeah.
I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah, I highly doubt that was a coincidence, right? It was, so knowing that, and then looking at where I was mentally, it was like, but I'm not living in the way that God wants me to live. So it became even more just crushing. So I didn't want to admit the fact that I was struggling to anybody, which drove in that isolation even more. So when I started admitting the fact that I was struggling and that I was depressed, man, it became not just my problem anymore.
Yeah.
We are, as I said earlier, communal beings. So why should we keep our struggles to ourselves?
Couldn't agree more. And that's something that, you know, as I've thought about this in more depth, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, I mean, that's just how the world, especially for men, right? That's how the world has always been. It's like, listen, you're a man. You show up, you do your job.
Yep.
You take the burden. Your problems are the least problems out of anybody around you. You know, everybody else's problems come first. And your job is to show up and be a man and handle your business, right?
Yeah, nothing affects you.
Nothing is supposed to affect. And if it does, you know, you're soft. You're,
Right.
you know, whatever. And the reality is that men have issues too, you know?
Right.
And just like everybody else. And a lot of times talking about those, figuring them out, you know, and helping. And I think we've touched on this in the past. Once you started to awaken from this, let's say, you realized that your story, the things that you can say to people, you just understanding where a lot of other people are coming from with similar issues, like even just the peanut issue with my son.
Yeah.
You're so understanding about it. That helps free up so many more people, so many other conversations, and it helps free you up inside as well.
100%.
Yeah, that's cool. That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
I love it. And now, you know, now we met because of the coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
And you were just somebody that, you know, every time you were in there, I was excited to see you because I knew we were going to have a good conversation. You know, you're always happy. You're always in a great mood. You always brighten my day a little bit, you
Thanks,
know,
man.
and for the 5 minutes a day that I always try and linger. I feel bad because there's probably today I was down there and there was a line behind me and I'm like, oh crap, I'm just shooting the breeze here for a little while. Sorry guys, you guys come and get your coffee. I've had mine. And so that's probably been pretty cool for you to just meet the people that come into the shop and create relationships and get to know folks that way.
Yeah. There's something that I've been saying for years now, is that the coffee shop is the daytime bar. Right? That the bar is a place that, or at least over, in alcohol, there's a type of conversation that allows for vulnerability, that different food and different drinks provide different types of conversation. I don't ever see myself having a very intense conversation over a Mountain Dew.
Right. All right. Listen, I am a recovering Mountain Dew addict here. I had some intense conversations over Mountain Dew.
Okay. All right. Well, I stand corrected.
Yeah, there you go.
But I think part of it is in its branding, right?
Yeah.
Coca-Cola has branded itself as, either the family drink or something you have at a movie theater,
right,
or in front of the television. Whereas alcohol, that probably is one of its downsides, its dark, underbellies, is people get, their tongue gets loosened.
Yeah.
Over.
Me, I know, man. I know better than anybody.
Yeah. But with that comes an ability to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And coffee, I think, has that same ability, just without some of that same dark stuff.
Right.
And if I can encourage that type of community, that type of conversation, and that ability to encourage people to get to know each other better, to study, to to have fantastic dialogue and debate at 8:00 in the morning, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Right? And if I can potentially even encourage that throughout the entire day, man, I'd be doing myself a disservice.
Right.
Because my whole life motto is inspiring others to see the world bigger. And that truly has been, the driving point to a lot of my big decisions in my life, and even the small ones.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, it comes down. I started with that motto after I went to Europe for the first time.
Very cool.
I saw just how massive the world was. I remember when I was in Paris that I felt like every single block had its own culture, and the people who walked those streets were different from one another. I really didn't like Paris.
Right. Okay.
But primarily because I was with, a group of 150 people, and
it's a little hard to do your own thing and see it the way you want to see it.
Yeah. And it was certainly tough, especially with some of the dietary stuff that I had to go through. I mean, we had our schedule and we had to stick to it.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to fit my own little schedule and making sure that I ate into a schedule of 150 different people that was already preset, right? It was very difficult. There were times where we were running from where we had to go get lunch or breakfast, and trying to meet up with the rest of the group at the next thing.
Yeah, I can see that being a hassle, yeah.
And Paris is notorious for being, just crappy people.
Right.
So it was really challenging, but, digression. So, but I did realize, and I fell in love with how diverse the people were, and how little of it I knew. And if I can encourage others to see that the world is bigger than their own understanding and themselves, then man,
that's huge. And the coffee shop gives you the opportunity, as people come in, to brighten their day a little bit, inspire them a little bit, which I know you've done with me. And it's funny, the awakening that you have sometimes when you realize, in the grand scheme of things, you're a speck of sand, right?
1,000,000%.
And people, a lot of times, they get really stuck in just seeing all the other specks of sand around them. And just if you could lift your head up a little bit and try and look at the big picture, there's a beautiful ocean and a beach and palm trees, and there's everything else out there. And life's about a lot more than just kind of like what we talked about before, the schooling system, getting great grades, going to buying a house, getting the white picket fence, getting a mortgage, following the rules, working your tail off, trading your time for money until you retire, and then sit around and wait till you croak, right? Like, I mean, and especially, as dudes, you're supposed to go and follow this path. And I think one of the things that's so neat about you and your life motto is you are inspiring people on a daily basis to try and see something a little bit bigger than just the mundane day by day thing that they're going through, and to dream bigger. And you have a pretty big dream, right? I definitely want to hear about that. It's coffee/pizza overseas. Like, I think that dream alone, putting it out there, the goal that you have to do this, and putting a little bit of effort into making that happen every day. You're a busy man, right? You've got your dietary restrictions that you got to deal with. You've got a job. You've got a little bit of a side hustle and taking photos and making documentaries that you really enjoy. But that dream is still out there, and you spend time working on it. I think that's really inspiring, that you don't just show up and work your 9 to 5 and go home and party. Yeah. You don't go home and sleep or play video games or watch Netflix marathons or whatever, but it's always staying active, staying busy, staying on that grind, because the time that you're putting in, little bits of time that you're putting in now, add up. Yeah. And it'll bring that dream closer. So when you're, 5 years down the road, you're ready. When the opportunity presents itself, you're ready. So I want to hear a little bit more about that, because I think from what I've heard, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, as I've mentioned, quite a few times already, just in these past few minutes, I love people, right? And I love having deep intellectual conversation. And as I was traveling back in 2018 to all of those different countries, I spent a few days in England. And from the moment I stepped off the plane and saw my first look at England,
cool, yeah,
which just happened to be a back parking lot of Heathrow Airport.
Nice. That did it.
I was like, this is where I've wanted to be my entire life. I was looking for home without knowing where it was. Mm-hmm. And then I saw that and I was like, this is as close as I'm going to find on this earth. And I think there's a deep calling for, where we are meant to be and where we are meant to be going.
Yeah.
And I, throughout those few days, just have never felt more at peace and excited in my life than those 3 days. So I made it my goal to go back. Mm-hmm. So in 2019, I went back for over a week.
Okay, nice.
And I went with a buddy of mine who, his name is Nathan Height. He is also a filmmaker. He's an actor living in LA now.
Cool.
And
nice. Shout out Nathan.
Shout out to Nathan. He's my brother, right?
That's amazing.
And he and I shared so many amazing experiences on that trip. We walked in Kensington Park and met some amazing people, some of who he had already met at different film festivals, who lived over there. And it was the most beautiful week probably of my entire life. And I came back and I was like, I gotta be there. I got to.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how I was going to make it. As I started to look into the visa situation, especially now after Brexit, it's pretty difficult. There are quite a few different tiers. There's and different types of workers. Okay. There's the skilled worker visa. There's the entrepreneur visa. There's all of these different types. And I'm trying to figure out how I can get over there. And I start applying for jobs after, or probably around March of 2021, now that it's 2022.
Right.
And in these past 10 months, I've probably applied to over 200 positions.
Wow. Well, just for my own understanding, what's an entrepreneur visa like? I mean, what stops you from saying that's what I do and I'm going to go start a business?
Yeah, there are a few questions that I have to answer, as well as have a certain amount of capital.
Gotcha.
And one of those questions is, why do you need to start the business here? What is the advantage of starting it in the UK rather than in America or in the Ukraine or Haiti?
Because I'm happier here.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't think that's
not a checkbox.
I don't think that's gonna work for those guys. But
we need to get them on the program then.
I know, right? We have to. We certainly need to have an economy more than just the financial economy.
Right. Interesting.
And so I'm starting to apply for positions that are, that would work for the skilled worker visa, right? So I'm in filmmaking. I do photography, videography, social media management, website creation, all of this stuff. And I'm applying for positions in digital studios, or even being in-house marketing reps for hotels, for different types of places. And so far, nothing. Maybe 10% have gotten back to me and saying, sorry, we're not, we're no longer taking your application into consideration.
Bummer.
And the first 10, 15 times maybe I got that email, it was like, all right, man, failure. Great. Cool.
Right.
But then it started to get just
a little discouraging.
Little discouraging. Yeah.
You got to keep the dream alive though, man. I mean, I feel that it's tricky. What about, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like, you pick a time frame, maybe it's the end of this year, or maybe it's 6 months or whatever it is. And you start DMing or messaging in the meantime people that have the job that you want over there.
Yeah.
And just tell them, hey, I'm going to come over there and I'm willing to work for free. I'm willing to be an intern. I'm willing to figure this out. And maybe that means that you go try and sling coffee in the off hours when you get there, and it's a struggle for a while and you got to save some money. How does, if the ultimate happiness comes from getting there and starting your dream, what's that sound like as an option?
I would love to be able to do that. And when I was, I guess, a little more ignorant as to the visa structure,
right,
I was more than willing to say, I'll hop on a plane and I'll, work for Costa Coffee, which is, their Starbucks.
Right.
And I was more than willing to do that. And then as I started to look, especially after Brexit, they're like, yeah, we're no longer able to hire people just not in this skilled worker category. So they're no longer hiring people to be baristas from outside the country.
Gotcha.
And for every new position that I want to work for as an expat, I have to get another visa certification.
I see.
Which sucks.
Right.
Because that's money out of my pocket to apply for that visa. That's money out of all of these different companies' pockets. So unfortunately, it just isn't much of an option. So I started thinking, well, if I'm not getting the results that I want as applying for all of these positions, what are some other avenues? I can try and get a job here in America, here for a global company, potentially here even in Indianapolis.
Sure. Yeah.
And then in the interview say, listen, this is my goal and my dream is to get over there and to live. So is it possible to work towards that transfer? That's an option. I started looking at getting a job in New York for a, a global company, one of those on the stock market, whatever it may be, because I'm sure people who have offices in New York have offices in London, England,
for sure. Yeah.
right? And probably in Shanghai and all of these other major cities in the world. So it almost would be just, all right, where do I want to work at that point? So, and then there were other possibilities, and the one that I thought about most, and I think the one that I'm most excited about, the one that I haven't felt anything like the passion that I feel for this project, is starting my own coffee shop there.
Very cool.
Now we're still struggling with the entrepreneurship visa, right? How do I start something and get around that entrepreneurship visa? Honestly, I have no idea if this should even be broadcasted.
That's probably right.
But how do I get around that? And it's, let's bring in someone who can be the legal owner of the shop. And so they are the legal owner, and then I come in basically as another co-owner or the operations dude, and I'm calling the shots, and then I just apply as a skilled worker. And
I see.
And that
Makes
way,
sense.
yeah, it's kind of a workaround, but certainly, from what I've heard, doable.
Well, you can always go there and open the London Sit With Me office and figure out how to get the app working over there.
Dude, if you want to,
this thing's gonna be worldwide, buddy. So there's no reason why that there's really no there's no work in the system in that. I mean, it's the God's honest truth,
Well, I mean, so I just over the Christmas holiday booked a trip over there for this summer.
There you go. All right.
And I actually want to talk to you about this. Is maybe figuring out a way where we can work together on that trip.
I like it.
I'm going to be over there for 2.5 weeks. And, remember some of those friends that I was telling you about that I met? Yeah, we're going on a road trip around the UK.
There you go. Nice.
So for a whole week, we're traveling around, going up into Scotland, hiking Ben Nevis there in the Highlands, and going into Edinburgh, Scotland. So, there's a lot of potential for Sit With Me around the UK.
I love it, man. And we don't have to dive into that rabbit hole now, but I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm 100% down with that, and we can kind of figure out the marketing strategy around that, especially this summer as things will get rolling here a little bit more. I'll have I'll have a couple of ad programs that I'm working on rolling, and
cool.
It's my dream is for that thing to be worldwide. So if there's a way for me to help give you a boost to realize your dream as well, man, I'm 100% down on that, man.
Thank you.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So, but I want to get back to the coffee shop, the pizza shop, the combo. Tell me a little bit about what you envision.
Yeah. So when I first came on board at Georgia Street Grind, which is my coffee shop, not my coffee shop, the coffee shop I work at.
Indianapolis, Indiana, on Georgia Street. Come check it out.
Yeah,
coffee's amazing.
Probably some of the best coffee I've ever had. I mean, I was
100%.
I was a regular there for 8 months before I started working.
Finally, you're like, I better just start working here because
I was spending way too much.
I need a discount on the coffee.
100%. So when I first came on board, my manager he asked me what seemed to be a simple question, but it very much is a loaded question. It's, if you were to start your ideal coffee shop, or if you were to design your ideal coffee shop, what would that look like?
Nice. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Fun question.
And I was like, holy crap, how do I even answer that? So I started thinking about it, and I told him, I was like, give me 2 weeks.
No way.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And he was like, all right, 2 weeks is yours. And I saw him put in his phone like a reminder for 2 weeks, ask Andrew about his coffee shop.
Right.
And so 2 weeks passes, and I spend that time just really diving into truly what I think what coffee is. If what the connotations around it are, and the things that happen over coffee, and what I want my shop to represent. And it became more and more of this community aspect of encouraging people to be there, not just to get an amazing cup of coffee, which I'm sure we will have.
Right.
But to sit down, and very similar to the pub in England, in Oxford, called the Eagle and Child, which I just heard a couple weeks ago has permanently closed. I mean, that's the place that that C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien sat and discussed their works, debated over the Chronicles of Narnia, the Lord of the Rings, right?
Wow. Super cool, yeah.
They
sad, man.
So sad. They closed, but I want to have that same reputation, that I provide a space that encourages that kind of conversation, of community, of this almost strong brother and sisterhood bond to the people that work there and patron there.
Awesome. And
so how do I do that? It can't just be coffee. If I just serve a cup of coffee, it's only a coffee shop. Right? So how do I encourage people to be there for more than just that? Well, having kind of a library.
Okay.
Like a public library where it's one of those, like you bring one, you take one type thing.
Yeah,
it's just
cool.
like this revolving door of books, and encouraging people, to annotate and to work with this stuff, and then having a whole bunch of events, bringing people together, and may it be a small concert series. So having a small stage there where you get to come together as a group of people and really enjoy being there for one specific cause. Like NPR has these tiny desk concerts.
Yeah.
So having something similar, and as I'm trying to think through what I want this to be like, I know that people need to be there for long periods of time. Obviously, there are going to be tons of people who come, get their coffee, and go, and that's fine.
Sure.
But having that opportunity for people to be there longer. So I need comfortable chairs and an environment that's welcoming and homey.
Yeah.
Where does that fit? I start thinking stateside, because that's where I am. That's that's where all my connections are. Indianapolis, for hell, isn't. Right. Unless there are very, very small pockets, maybe like one corner of the entire city. And even then, I'm in direct competition with a whole bunch of different people and places. And then I start thinking, all right, well, outside of there, where might it be? Well, Boulder, Colorado might be all right.
Yeah.
Madison, Wisconsin, Boston, Massachusetts. But if I'm traveling already to start this thing, why not be where I want to be?
Yeah, just go rip the Band-Aid off and get where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
So then I start thinking in England. Well, London is, an amazing city, someplace that I'd love being. But London's a fast city. I don't know how many people want to sit and be for a while in London. There are certainly maybe some neighborhoods there, very similarly to like a Fountain Square here in Indianapolis, which our other coffee shop, Bova Conti Coffee, is there.
Nice.
So I'm hanging out there maybe 2 days a week as well, to a couple days at Georgia Street. But, maybe more of the hipster areas of London.
I love it.
That could work.
What do you think about adding a couple of these and a little recorder in your coffee shop? Like, it'd be kind of fun to have some mics and people could get in there and read and talk and chop it up a little bit. And they're like, you know what, this is like we were talking about earlier. It's a great conversation that you and your roommate have all the time. And you guys, so many people have said, oh, I want to start a podcast, or I want to get some of my thoughts on recorded. And maybe you have a little quiet room there with a couple of mics and people can bring their own SD card and pop it in. And
that'd be so cool. I hadn't thought about that.
And then take it with them, or find a way to work it in where you make the pod out of there, and you can give them a copy if they want to take it, but they record it and lay it down, and you can decide what hits the air and what doesn't.
Weekly thoughts from the shop.
That sounds amazing.
It really does.
Have some, just have your best customers, your regulars, your favorite people in there. And sometimes you sit with them. Sometimes they just, reserve it for 30 minutes to an hour and have a coffee shop / podcast studio.
Dude, that'd be dope.
There you go.
I'm still thinking through this, and as I'm really working through this, with some of my friends in England too. And they say London is possible, but it'd be tough and rent is super high. Right. Because it's forking London.
Right.
I'm like, all right, well, what about Oxford?
Here you go.
Oxford already has that reputation.
Get it if you got to.
No, I'm good.
Keep rolling.
Oxford already has that reputation of debate, and as I said, Lewis and Tolkien were there.
Very cool, yeah.
So I wouldn't have to struggle to find the right people. I mean, the people who go to school there and teach there are some of the best and brightest in the world. So that'd be pretty cool.
That'd be amazing.
And Oxford already has almost like this aesthetic as well of like little bit dark, but certainly homey, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, Oxford is it.
That's cool.
As I'm starting to think through, I want to show that I'm here in my branding. I want to show that this is who I am. This is what the shop is. And, I'm not just another American coming in to try and start something in Europe. No, I want to say I respect and I love who you are. And I just want to engage with that. Right. Mm-hmm. So as I'm thinking through, I struggled so hard with the name of what I wanted it to be. And I thought probably for a solid 3 weeks of different names. I have pages of notes, but then also at times there were just blanks. I was just sitting there and I came up with nothing.
It's such a hard process to go through if you haven't been through it.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I really hate it. But then I was in the middle of my shift at Georgia Street, and I was thinking through, and I was just building a drink, and it was so obvious, and that I almost hated myself for not thinking of it earlier.
Sooner, yeah.
Yeah. And it is the Ox.
Nice.
The Ox Coffee and Pizza Pub.
That's amazing. It fits perfectly.
Yeah, it's that hominess, it's that darkness, it's that hardiness of coffee, of pizza, which I don't think I've mentioned yet. The meals that have been most influential in my life have been the ones that are easy enough to eat but have that artisan factor.
Yeah. And
really all have been pizza.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then being able to be open into the evening hours and having that that pub atmosphere, not necessarily a bar, but a pub where you're able to have a drink or two and then go on your night. And Yeah,
I love it, man. Like, you said the name The Ox, and all of a sudden the picture hit my head of exactly what this place looks like with the books and the cool, lounge furniture and, a coffee bar / regular bar and maybe a little podcast studio tucked in the corner. You never know.
Right.
But, it's funny when you say that and you paint that picture, I see it. I see the vision, and it's cool that you're able to do that. You're able to paint that for people, and, I'm ready to go hang out there right now.
Thanks, man. Yeah. And I think one of the coolest things is really what we serve. It's not just food. It's not just an atmosphere, but it's all of it together, right? And allowing it to be a haven for people like myself with the dietary restrictions that I have, which is celiac disease, where I cannot eat any single crumb of gluten for the rest of my life, or else, I basically die.
Unbelievable.
So the entire place would be gluten-free pizza, gluten-free local brews, ciders, beers. And the only thing, the thing that I've struggled with is all right, there probably aren't too many gluten-free beers around. Then we'll have, some bottled or canned
couple things here and there,
beers, right? But that's the only thing. It's bottled and brought in.
Yeah.
No free-flowing death juice in my restaurant, right?
Makes sense. I like that.
So it allows for safety, and because especially cross-contamination of pizza is super easy.
Okay.
Because that flour gets in the air, and it stays in the air for upwards to 48 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
And it settles on everything. So
wow.
So even just a small layering of that flour that gets in the air can, crush me and crush my insides.
Can't even entertain it.
Right.
Yeah.
So having that gluten-free option, and really the only option, but it's going to be some of the best pizza you'll ever have.
Yeah. You wouldn't even know at the end of the day, as long as it's made well and
exactly. Yeah. Not necessarily advertising as a restaurant that's gluten-free. It just so happens that it is.
Yeah.
That's in the world that we live in today. That's the way it has to be.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily is a problem that way, but it is what it is, right? But
I love it, man. I think it's an amazing idea. It's cool to see you on your grind for it already. Putting things down on paper, visualizing it, starting to climb the ladder to get yourself there. I think that's pretty amazing. I'm excited for you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's been cool to sit down and chat with you, man. You're one of the people I look forward to seeing every day. When I bump into you at the coffee shop, and I've just been wanting to talk to you and hear more about your story and share this with some folks so other people can hear about how cool you are and what a good person you are, and just your positive attitude and outlook, man. I think it's really special. It's cool that you're able to share that in an environment like a coffee shop, and you have these goals to take it to a bigger scale.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun. Listen, everybody who's out there listening, go see Andrew at the Georgia Street Grind in Bovacanti, right? You're going to be bouncing back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
He's on the Sit With Me app, so you can look there and see where he's working, when he's working. You can come say hey. He'll brighten your day like he does mine. And he's pretty cool at filmmaking and documentaries and things like that. So if you're a small business out there, you need some help, right? If making a video, whether a marketing piece, that sort of thing, they can reach out to you as well, right?
Yeah. So my website is winelymedia.com, WINELY media.com.
Very cool. And you're on Instagram, that sort of thing too.
Yep.
Right?
Winely Media, Andrew J. Winely.
Right.
So I, obviously I'm a person, so I have my own personal account.
Right.
And then I also have my business account. Business is still, I don't do a lot with it because I'm doing a lot for other people.
That's cool.
But, I'm checking it. I'm on it. So,
well, this, it's the quality of what I've seen you can create is pretty impressive, man. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was super professional and really well done. And you know, I've been happy to get to work with you.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
It was fun talking, dude.
Oh, man, it's been great. Thank you.